Hello. This is Antje from Byte Shuffle. Thank you for always watching our videos. This time, I've put together a summary of how to approach the Jeskai Control matchup when playing Doomsday, including strategy and sideboarding tips. There's also a link to the pile breakdown video in the description, so feel free to check it out. Here is the deck list we will be using this time. I'll mulligan since I have no lands. I'll put Dark Ritual on the bottom. I was unsure whether to go for it here since I had one set of Force of Will, but my only blue card is Thassa's Oracle. That would leave Jace, Wielder of Mysteries as my sole remaining win condition. Since I don't have any lands on the battlefield, it would be very difficult to build a functional pile, so I started with a fetch land. I'm going all in. From here, I'll generate more mana for the combo. I'll respond with Force of Will. Since my opponent has open mana and days likely won't be effective, I used it as the pitch cost. Since my opponent didn't follow up with a counter, they're likely holding removal or draw spells in hand. Also, since they've revealed Supreme Verdict, it's highly likely they're playing a control deck. Therefore, since the opponent's clock is likely slow, I should be able to recover the resources spent by casting Night's Whisper. I'll make a move by combining discard with Thassa's Oracle. I'll include Jace, Wielder of Mysteries in the pile as a backup in case the initial attempt fails. Since I'll need a land to cast Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, I'll use the remaining slot in the pile to include a land. I build my pile in the order of Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, dual land, Thoughtseize, Night's Whisper. The opponent shuffled after casting Ponder. I didn't really expect it, but I cast Cabal Ritual hoping my opponent might use a counterspell on it. I'll use discard to scout ahead. I took out Force of Will. The opponent shuffled after casting Ponder. I'll win with Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. Since it's the main deck game, it's unlikely they're running Consign to Memory. In hindsight, I think it would have been better to go for the win with Thassa's Oracle here. Before sideboarding, I'd like to review the list we used. First, the conclusion. I will explain it step by step. Here are the key cards in Jeskai Control that can impact Doomsday. First, against various counterspells like Force of Will, Force of Negation, Flusterstorm, Counterspell, and Consign to Memory. I'll bring in Duress and Flusterstorm to deal with them. I'll also bring in Defense Grid, though it's not particularly strong in this matchup since the opponent tends to develop their mana base well. If it resolves early, it can sometimes lead to an easy win, so I included just 2 copies. Next, we have Pyroblast. It can counter key blue cards like Thassa's Oracle. Depending on how the game unfolds, it may be necessary to pair it with Cavern of Souls when building the pile. I'll side out Consider, as it becomes an easy target for Pyroblast. I'll also side out Personal Tutor. These are removed because they're vulnerable to Pyroblast, and in the case of Personal Tutor, it also reduces your hand size. Next is Stony Silence. It shuts down Lotus Petal and Lion's Eye Diamond. Unlike ANT, it can sometimes be ignored depending on the board state, so simply keeping it in mind when constructing the pile should be enough. I'll reduce the number of Lotus Petals. However, since there are situations where Lotus Petal is useful during pile construction, I'll keep 1 copy in the deck instead of removing them all. I'll side out Cabal Ritual. This is because the plan is to carefully strip the opponent's interaction before going all in, which naturally leads to more lands on the battlefield, making fast mana like Cabal Ritual less impactful. I'll also reduce the number of Edge of Autumn. This is because life total interactions are minimal in this matchup, making Edge of Autumn the least valuable among the cyclers. Next is Back to Basics. It occasionally shows up in their deck, so I'll keep basic lands in my deck to be prepared for it. I'll adjust based on the types of lands my opponent plays. deciding whether or not to play around back to basics. Next are Deafening Silence and Teferi Time Reveller. Once these are on the battlefield, they shut off our counter spells. To successfully resolve the combo, we'll need to use discard spells to break through and ensure we have 3 black mana from 3 lands. It's also helpful to have a decent number of lands on the battlefield as a backup plan against Deafening Silence and Teferi Time Reveller. Lastly, Surgical Extraction can rearrange the order of our pile after it has been constructed. I won't go into the specifics here, but if you're interested, check out the pile breakdown video linked in the description. It covers the method in detail. I'll keep this hand since it looks like I can go all in on turn 1. I'm going all in. From here, I'll increase the mana needed for the combo. I'll use Discard to scout ahead. I took out Force of Negation. Since the opponent's clock is slow, I'll recover the resources spent on the combo with Night's Whisper. I'll include Duress in the pile to deal with Consign to Memory, and Cavern of Souls to handle other counters like Pyroblast. Since the opponent might be running cards like Snapcaster Mage, I chose Edge of Autumn as the pile opener. I built the pile in the following order: Thassa's Oracle, Edge of Autumn, Cavern of Souls, Duress, Night's Whisper. I'll use Night's Whisper to replenish my resources. I'll use Discard to scout ahead. There were a few options, but I decided to take Pyroblast this time. I'm going to draw into the pile with the opener. I win with Thassa's Oracle. I'll counter it with Daze. Lastly, I have an announcement. I'm posting the concepts behind the images used in my videos, as well as small flavor-inspired stories, in the YouTube community section. Additionally, I'm selling merch for the channel through the link in the description. If you're interested, be sure to check it out. Thank you for watching up to this point. I apologize for the many play mistakes. I hope to improve at MTG together with everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving it a thumbs up. See you next time. This is Antya.